Hey there. Um, I'm Jan. I will talk about advanced voice applications for Alexa and Google Assistant today. I'm really happy to be here. It's probably my largest screen ever. This is quite intimidating. So let's see if some of my slides are a little too large. But yeah, I'm really happy to talk about this topic today. Advanced is still something very new for me. But I was asked to do an advanced talk just because there were so many beginner talks about voice and bots already. And so let's see if you agree if what I say is supposed to be advanced at such an early stage. About myself, so I'm one of two founders of Jovo. We're a company here based in Berlin, and we're really in the picks and shovels business. So our goal is to provide the right tools for developers and professionals, designers, to create great voice applications. And we were lucky, so we started a little more over a year ago, and we were lucky to be selected as one of 8 companies to go through a voice-based accelerator in New York called VoiceCamp. And while we were working there, we launched our first product, which is an open source framework for voice app development. So while you only have to build code once, and it works for both Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. And we launched this publicly in September last year, and are now working on improving the framework and building the community around this open source framework, and it's been a lot of fun. And I will share a little bit about what we learned while working with all these different talented individuals that use our framework and work with brands and agencies, and then talk a little bit about what I think are advanced voice applications. So as this is an advanced talk, so I don't know who of you is like super interested in voice, but can you show some quick hands, like who of you owns a voice device at home, like a smart speaker? Okay, this is a lot, which is cool. Who owns an Alexa device and Google Home? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so you already know like how it works, and so we believe that there will be more and more people talking to this. The first thing many people talk about when talking about voice is smart speakers. And I had to update this slide very often last year because the companies, they introduced so many new devices like every other week, and that this got quite interesting and already like kind of fragmented, like what should I develop for, what should I buy for my home. But I believe that this is a very interesting space, and it's moving so fast that it's really great to be in this space. And we're all still experimenting. I mean, I started in January last year, and like while working on different projects, I think it's still very interesting to ask yourself, like, what is actually a great voice app, and how can we build great voice applications? And as I already said, like this space is still early and everything could change. So what I say, like, take it with a grain of salt, because that could be like a lie in probably 2 months with the platforms evolving so fast. But one thing I'm sure of is that it's extremely difficult right now to build great experiences for voice. There are so many tools out there, including ours, that make it extremely easy to go from 0 to 1 and to build a prototype and to test how it works. But it's extremely difficult to use this like 1 and go to a 10, for example, and to build something of real value. And but this also makes the space so exciting. And I want to talk a little bit about the basics, but only a little bit. So who of you has actually developed a voice app before? Oh, that's interesting. That's really cool. Okay, so I will talk about the basics a little bit so that everyone understands the basic principles of voice app development, and then talk about like some ingredients of advanced voice apps, and then about one thing that's very important to me. It's context to consider when developing and designing for voice. So let's talk about the basic principles of voice app development first. So when people talk about voice, they right now very often talk about smart speakers. So I have an Alexa at home, for example, is something like my parents say all the time. And but that's actually just a speaker with a microphone and a Wi-Fi connection. Where the magic really happens is the voice platforms that are on top of that. So it's Amazon Alexa, it's Google Assistant, living in these smart speakers, connected to the cloud and understanding what you want, and then passing a request on to a voice app that's built on top of that. So for Alexa, we have Alexa Skills. For Google Assistant, we have Actions, but they're now transitioning to using apps for Google Assistant sometimes. And then we have Siri. And Siri is still quite like a quite closed ecosystem, so it's very, very difficult to build something great for Siri. This is why most tool providers and developers don't really build for Siri until they open up the platform. So we won't talk about Siri specifically today, but rather talk about Alexa and Google Assistant. And if we just take a look at the ecosystems around those platforms, it's clear that, like when we're talking about quantity, that Alexa is still like ahead of Google Assistant. That doesn't mean that there's like more like better apps for Alexa out there, but at least it's more. And I mean, Google Home has been around in Germany for only a few months now. They launched in August. Alexa launched publicly in January or February last year. So it has been around a little longer. But it's definitely some very growing ecosystems. And Google Home especially is growing really fast right now after the Google Home Mini got introduced as a competitor to the Echo Dot. Now more and more people also have Google Home Minis at home. And then also I've actually talked to many people that switched from an iPhone to a Pixel 2, for example, because of Google Assistant. So, for example, I have a Pixel 2, and it's actually really great to just squeeze the phone and talk to Google Assistant. It still feels weird sometimes, but I'm talking to I'm talking to my phone more than I'm tapping sometimes, just because it's very easy to just tell it to set a timer, for example. So how it works, like under the hood, is there's 3 or 4 elements about the voice application. It's like a person talking to a device. It's like the voice input. And then we have the voice platforms and the fulfillment part, the code of your voice app. And this is where like the voice platforms, they do the automatic speech recognition, the ASR. And on the Alexa side, Alexa also does the NLU, which is the natural language understanding. So on Google Assistant, this is different. You have the Google Assistant platform that does the speech recognition, and then the natural language understanding, people can actually choose what they use. So you actually get a transcript from Google Assistant, and most people use Dialogflow there because it's like very well integrated. And then you have the fulfillment part. So you create your language model on these voice platforms, and they just send you a request. So that person just talked to your skill and just said something, had a specific intent to like order something, for example. And then they send you this request, and there you can do whatever you want and just create a response and return it back to the voice platform. And previously, and still, people have to build for both of these ecosystems and platforms. So most Alexa skills are hosted on AWS Lambda and use the Alexa Skills Kit. And most Google Actions use the Actions SDK and the Google Cloud Platform, which is 2 apps to maintain. And that's our main benefit right now, next to rapid prototyping and integrations and stuff like that, is that people only have to use like one app, only have to learn one domain-specific language and build and host it wherever they want. So you actually just build it once, host it wherever you want, and then we also offer like analytics integrations, database integrations, and stuff like that. And this is growing thanks to our community, who just launched, I think, like the Google Cloud Storage and the Azure integration were just added by our community 3 weeks ago. But this is mostly it from the advertisement side for Jovo. If you want to check it out, just take a look there. And we also have a Slack channel which you can access on our website. We're always happy to get feedback and talk about this. And yeah, and this is how like a simple voice app, like a Hello World voice app that asks you for your for your name looks like. And as you can see here, this looks super simple. So this is definitely not an advanced voice app. It's just a hello world intent. It asks you for your name, and if that person actually responds with a name, with a my name is intent, you like address that person with their name and say, okay, nice to meet you. And that's it. And so it's super easy to get started, as you can see. So just with our new command line interface tools and our new webhook that we just launched a few months ago, this takes like probably like 5 minutes to properly set it up, even if you don't have an Amazon developer account yet. So this is super easy, and it gets more difficult once you want to build something of real value, actually. And this is why I'm excited to give this talk, because I've also mostly talked about like basic stuff yet, because the space is so early, and I'm really interested in your feedback afterwards about what you think about like what advanced voice apps are. Has anyone of you actually ever used something you would call an advanced voice app? What was it? Okay, and how did it turn out? Ah, nice. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm also like, so the problem is that if you compare voice with like mobile apps 10 years ago, like 10 years ago, there was no real like swiping, pinching, pull to refresh, everything we have in mobile apps that we're now used to, that was developed over time. I think like pull to refresh, that's now something everyone expects, but that was, I think, introduced by Twitter, I think 2012 or 13, and now everyone uses it. And so, but at the beginning in the App Store, like fart apps were like the #1 downloaded apps, and as we can see here, this is quite similar. And this is why I have to submit my master's thesis on April the 30th, and I am, for this thesis, comparing mobile apps with the voice ecosystem, just to see like where could be new business models and like where are patterns where the mobile app ecosystem could basically repeat itself for the voice ecosystem. And so it's still like very difficult to find out like what is an advanced voice app, or where we are right now. And if we think about the analogy of crawl, walk, and run, it's I think if we think about, okay, the left one is an okay voice app, and in the middle we have a good one, and to the right we have a great one, I believe we're probably somewhere here. I believe this will change a lot in the next few years, but this is something interesting, it's important to consider. And as I'm only one person, and I'm like, I don't want to just give you advice from my 1 year of development, I asked a few people in the voice space who have built better stuff than I have about what they think what a great voice app is, or what makes an advanced voice app. I asked them 2 questions. The first one is, what distinguishes a great voice application from a good one? I got quite some interesting answers. And I will just walk you through some of their answers and then give some examples how we tried to solve that with one voice app we developed. And so Brett Kinsella, for example, he's the editor of the most the most viewed and most popular voice website, voice news site, basically. So most of the stats people use in presentations like this are from voicebot.ai, so huge shout out to him. And what he says is there is no single formula for a good voice app. Some are there to just like get a task done, and others are there to delight users. But what I think is very interesting is like clear and efficient interactions. Like the main use case, like the main reason many of us here bought an Alexa device, for example, was to save us time, to not having to grab our phones and then opening an app to see like what the weather is, for example. And so having like a clear, efficient interaction is really helpful. And I will walk you through one simple example. So together with a company here in Berlin, Gimondo, we built an Alexa skill that's a 5-minute workout. So Gimondo is a brand that lets you work out everywhere, and so for them and for us, it was like clear that sometimes it just makes more sense to just use voice, for example, for workouts. So previously, their users just used like set up a chair at home and then like put out their tablet, open the app there, and then did the workout, and always like kept looking at the screen all the time. So it didn't really make sense. And so how the interaction looks like, it's you open Gimondo, and then it like gives you an introduction. It's a little longer than this one, and then it asks you like what body part you want to work on or what type of workout you want to do. You answer with one, and then it asks you for your fitness level as well. So this is a long interaction. If you like, it doesn't seem like one, but if you have it like every day, if you just want to do a 5-minute workout, this is quite annoying. And that was like one of the major learnings we had, was that you just get annoyed like quite quickly if something like that keeps repeating itself. And so for us, and what others said as well, is that like voice apps right now, many of them are there to save us time. So for repeat users, we should really try to save them more and more time the more they use the app. So for example, after my fitness level is saved, I should just tell it to do a leg workout, and then that's it. Like that's something like very, very basic. But what we even learned then is that even this can get like quite tedious and annoying. I just want to get started with a leg workout. And so what we started building into the interaction were one-shots where you can actually like just tell Gimondo to do a leg workout, and then it would just get started. So this is like way easier and way more efficient than having to grab your tablet and so on, as I mentioned before. And I think these are the interactions that are so important with voice, to actually focus on this repeat usage and save people time. And another expert I asked was Adva Levin. She just won the Alexa Kids Skill Challenge with a skill. So it was a challenge hosted by Amazon. I think she won about $25,000 for her skill. And her skill stood out because it had such a great personality. It was a game for kids. It was a lot of laughs when you saw videos of people using it. So this stood out. So for her, it's not just like building something that works, it's about like making people smile. And the personality part is something extremely important for us as well. And when we built Alexa skills, it's sometimes difficult to distinguish your brand from Alexa, because it's like in Alexa's voice, and it's a little difficult. What we did for Gimondo is that you actually didn't talk to Alexa to do the workout. You talk to the fitness trainer Caroline. So Caroline, working at Gimondo, she went to a recording studio and recorded all of the things that were said, and so the whole interaction feels more personal and natural. But of course, this has some limitations. You can't like do stuff like ask for people's names to make it a more personal experience, because like you can't scale her being at the recording studio. And so that's something to consider. But for stuff that is like limited in the content, this could be something interesting to use pre-recorded audio for a more personal experience. And Dave Young is also a developer from Boston. He builds some interesting things for movie theaters, for example. Also uses the Jovo framework, and he says that repeatable value is important. And I believe the next quote says the same thing. It's like Nick Schwab. He is the founder of Invoked Apps. He was the first one to publish all these like massively popular like thunderstorm sound skills, like all these white noise skills. Like he has, I believe, 250,000 users a day. And what he says as well is to think about like long-term user experiences a lot, not something for just like build something for once and that's it. Because with voice, it's extremely important you don't have a home screen. You don't have like anything that reminds you which skills you have enabled, for example. And so for voice, it's even more important to build a habit and think about ways where people can use it daily or at least several times a week, so they don't forget how much value it brings to them, because like changing people's habits is extremely difficult. And this was an interesting quote as well, I think. And how we try to, so he mentions like randomizing TTS, which is text to speech. And so when you listen to the same thing every time, this gets annoying as well. So what we, after we talked to many developers, what we implemented into our framework, for example, is you can just add an array of strings of output, and it randomizes the output, so that you can like provide maybe 5 to 10 variances of some output and have a more personal experience, so that it doesn't sound the same way every single day. So these are just small things that I believe are the details that make a better voice app than just a standard one. And what's also something that might sound obvious, so Octavio, he has built about 40 to 50 Alexa skills right now, and I believe like 5 Google Actions. So he's like extremely, like he's done a lot in this space. And so it might sound obvious, like it shouldn't crash, but what happened after we tested Gmondo was we learned, okay, people are just like humans. I don't know what it is about us, but we always try to break things, and so stuff like this happens that like doesn't make sense when you like design it and develop it. Like why would anyone say this? But it's like it happened more often than we thought, and so finally Amazon announced this yesterday is that you actually get access to how people talked to your skill. Google Assistant already had that you get the raw text of what people said. In this example here with Alexa, you didn't get anything, so you didn't know what people actually said. So what we did, we had to do a lot of user testing so that like some words people said didn't map to just another intent, and we would never like find out why this happened, why people were frustrated. So this really helps. This is a really good announcement. And if we take a look at the second paragraph, what Octavio said is don't lose context, and that's something interesting, because this leading me to the next question, where context almost appeared in every answer from these experts. It's like, because I'm still having difficulties defining what an advanced voice app is, I asked them as well, like, what do they think will advanced voice apps look like? And Brett Kinsella said greater use of context, and then also to have like not isolated experiences, but rather have it connected to more and more devices and experiences surrounding us. And that's also what Octavio said, is connecting to the outside world. And so this was actually our initial idea when we applied to the Voice Accelerator, was to help developers create experiences that bridge the gap between voice and mobile apps, for example, to have more cohesive experiences across devices and platforms. And this gets more and more like we switched to the Jovo framework because we believe it's a more specific use case, because people are just getting started with voice now. And are now starting to think, like once the market matures, are now starting to think about how does that actually get connected to my mobile apps, for example. And also Antonia, she gave a presentation yesterday. She also said that like context is important, and this is why, because so many people mentioned this is why I wanted to talk briefly about context. So when they talk about context, some of them meant something like understanding where I am in the conversation right now, which Alexa can't do. So if you ask Alexa for actors in a certain movie, and she answers like, okay, this is this and that one, and then you ask her, okay, but what's like, how old is the first one that you mentioned? Alexa can't do that. So she has amnesia after every answer she gave. And Google Assistant is a little better there. Or it's just stuff like that. It's like, sorry, could you please repeat that? This is something like even the Gmondo skill can't do that, and now we're currently working on an update. Like even things like that are just small details, but they make the experience better to actually like learn, okay, wait, this person didn't understand it correctly, so let's just return that. And this was, I think that was even a feature request that was just submitted 2 days ago with someone who does that like right now manually to save like the object, the response object into each session to keep the context alive and understand like what was the last thing I said. And we are doing a few steps into that direction with a user class that we're currently building, which stores some metadata that, for example, allows people to save if someone has ever used the help intent, for example, if how often a user used this voice app and when was the last time the person used it, and to save some data to be able to use it later for more contextual experiences. But there's a long way to go for tools to help people build more contextual experiences. And when we talk about context, what I think is also important is to think about context factors. I brought two, the when and the where. I want to talk a little bit about them, like what to consider when building for voice, because many of the experts, what they said was a little bit about like bring value, bring repeatable value, and I believe it's important to understand that, like what context people are in when designing the experience, because if you don't consider a context, like what context is the person in when they're talking to my voice app, it's difficult to bring repeatable value. And so let's first talk about the when, which actually, like, it's difficult to talk about the when without talking about the where, because smart speakers for Alexa, for example, they are like specifically home devices. Amazon's goal right now is to own the home, where Google is a little different with Google Assistant I just mentioned. And so, but this also means that most users use it either in the mornings or in the afternoons or evenings, because that's when they're at home mostly. And so there's a huge gap between those. But those are two completely different use cases. So I believe this is important to consider when designing it. Is my experience a morning experience or is it an evening experience? In the morning, I might get ready, so I don't really have time for like long conversations and like funny interactions. Or is it after work? I'm just relaxing on the couch or there, and I have time. So those are two different contexts. And if we're talking about the where, this also, is it a device that's sitting in the living room after work, for example, to relax, or is it in the kitchen, or in the bedroom, for example? So this is another report from voicebot.ai. They ask people where their devices are, and so it's very clear that like most devices are in the living room, kitchen, bedroom. So that's something important to consider. I have one in the bathroom. It's great to listen to the news while brushing teeth. I would recommend that, but not a lot of people seem to do that, apparently. And but if we're talking about the home devices, I just mentioned Google Assistant. So that's something interesting, because now more and more people use voice also on their mobile phones. So this could be something interesting for bridging the gap between the morning and evening context. And this opens up a lot of new possibilities. And so I wanted to quickly talk about what I think is ahead. So cars. That's a lot of cars do this right now, integrate with voice assistants. My cousin, he just sent me an audio recording a few days ago on WhatsApp, where his son, he's 3 years old, tells the car radio repeatedly to like Alexa stop, because he wanted to turn off the music, and he was like not understanding at all why the car radio wouldn't respond to him. So it's extremely interesting, like how this changes. And then also on the go. So I got those from Kickstarter, and I use those smart earbuds every day. And this when I'm on the bike and I just like double tap it and ask it to bring me home, it opens Google Assistant, opens Google Maps, and navigates me home. So I think this is extremely interesting, and I think this will happen more and more often. And so for 2018, 2019, I believe this will change. We will stop thinking about voice only related to smart speakers and think more and more about voice experiences in the home, but also beyond the home. And what I just mentioned with my cousin was what I think could be called a ripple effect, a smart speaker ripple effect, where once we are expecting stuff like that, like talking to Alexa or Google Assistant easily at home, we expect it more and more also outside. So the car example from my cousin right now, or when people are at hotels, for example, I read often on Twitter that people are disappointed when they are just used to Alexa and then are staying at a hotel and it doesn't work anymore. So people are getting used to that more and more, and this also opens up a lot of new opportunities for people that have long commutes, for example, in the car, and but also for work. So Amazon launched Alexa for Business, and there's other people that do that. So this context is interesting, I believe. So the voice space is so, like, there's so many possibilities and also so many technical limitations that it can be quite daunting sometimes to like where to get started. And so for like to bring repeatable value, I think it's important, like if you want to get started today, experiment with it today, is to think about, okay, what's like the number one thing where it can add value right now. So here's, for example, if you look at like some customer journey of like in the e-commerce business, for example, we have like content, reading about things, educating myself as a consumer, and then buying something and then contacting service afterwards. And so these skills, they all, like their mobile apps probably do all of that. But on voice, they picked some specific examples of one specific thing to do, one thing where they think they could provide the most value. So for example, Starbucks, they only built a reorder skill where you are at home in an urban area, for example, and just tell it to reorder one of your last 5 orders, and then you walk out and it's already been paid for and you grab it. I mean, this only works in like large cities, but I think this is an interesting example of just picking one use case and try to go from there and provide value. Okay, so that was it. Just a quick introduction. I hope it helped. I still believe it's tough to build something great, but that it is worth it right now because you learn so much by just building things and experimenting with that a lot. And I believe that people that build the skills to build voice apps in-house or do like independent work, they have a huge advantage compared to other people that just think about, okay, what can I publish now and then that's it, because I believe that tweaking it over time and looking at how people use it and making it better and better over time is key to building great voice applications. Okay, that was it. If you wanna, yeah, I'm still here for the next few hours. If you have any questions about that, let me know. So we have the framework. We also sometimes work with brands like Gimondo to improve our framework and to bring in some people from our community, which we call Jovo Studios. Let me know if you have any questions. Cool. Thanks a lot. I think we have maybe a few more minutes for questions. Does anyone have a question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 I think this is a very, very interesting question. So I think no one has quite figured that out yet. Like even Alexa or Google Assistant, they have like two completely different ways of tackling this problem. On Alexa, you have, it's very personified. So you have like Alexa has the name Alexa. Alexa is sometimes like telling jokes and stuff like that. And on Google Assistant, it's the like completely different. It's called Google Assistant. It doesn't have a name on purpose. And this is also different with like skills, for example, like you teach Alexa something to do. So it's actually still Alexa behind there. And on Google Assistant is more like a moderator or an operator. You're at a dinner party talking to someone, and that someone asks that someone a question, and they remember that someone over there knows how to answer it. So Google Assistant is pulling in that person into the conversation. So those Google actions have different voices compared to Google Assistant, for example. So there's different things to consider there, and I believe that people are still trying to figure it out. So many people believe that it's a fault that Google does that, but like on paper it makes sense, and I believe it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. Many people also say that like this whole personification is something like flat design, for example. So if we talk about mobile app design, 10 years ago every button looked like a real world button because we had to like for us, we were used to real world buttons, and to actually recognize it as a button on a mobile app, it had to look like a button. And now with flat design, like we're now used to that, and it doesn't have to look like this anymore. And there was an interesting post that compared like these two options, like with voice. For Alexa, for example, we as users now feel like we need to imagine a person like really sitting in there because it has a voice. But this could also change in the future because we get more used to that. I don't know if that helps. Yeah, back there. Mm-hmm. So Siri really has better automatic speech recognition as well. So if you talk to Siri, like the output looks better than if you compare to Alexa, for example. But what's the problem with Siri is that every voice app for Siri has to be connected to a mobile app. So it's just a feature, a deep link into a mobile app that can be added to an iOS app. So right now, the code example I showed there, where you have like these intents and stuff like this, that doesn't work. It's not, the platform is not as open. We watched the WWDC last year in May, and we thought, okay, they're gonna announce an open platform. This is gonna be great for the voice ecosystem, but they didn't. Let's see what happens this year. But yeah, sales of the HomePod have been slow. And I'm still like, I have been an Apple user for a long time, but switched to Google Assistant now just because it didn't make sense for me to stick to Siri and the high price of the iPhone 10. And so I still believe that they could turn it around if they open up the platform, but it takes work, I think. It could work. So the Siri kit offers, I think, 8 different use cases. It's like calling a cab, taking notes. Not sure about the others. So if it supports these use cases, you could maybe do that with a very lightweight mobile app, focusing a lot on the voice part. Will probably be possible. I'm not sure though. Okay. I think there was a question there first. Mhm. So our framework is closer to the Alexa skills kit, a little bit closer, because we liked how they do the handlers better. So it's I believe it's the same. It's like it's still both in Node.js, so it's not similar to iOS and Android where people have to actually learn like how does React Native work and then have like translators and stuff like that. It's just it's very close, and it was important for us to make the transition as easy as possible and to help both beginners but also advanced users to build great things on top of our framework. After you, like, as a first-time user, it's 2 steps, like, or 3. You say, yeah, and tell, like, we are changing it now. We're working on a new skill, because what we learned for Gimondo is, Caro, she recorded, like, 5 different workouts and for each fitness level. And that was wearing off pretty quickly. So people that used it very often, they had to do the same workouts. So we're now building something that's more modularized that helps people to have like repeatedly new content. Like the first time you just tell it to choose. The fitness level is you ask for your fitness level once, and then the second time you're asked if the fitness level was okay, or if you want to change it. And then I think you ask after like the 10th time or so. And then you can also say, change my fitness level to the skill, for example. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I think time for one more question, if there is any. Yeah. You mean multiple users using one skill? Amazon announced something like, so you have, on Alexa, for example, you have a household profile, so you can switch the profile, so this could work. Not in the skill, that's right. So Google Assistant, for example, they give different voices, different user IDs. So this works there out of the box. For Gimondo, we didn't consider this as like one of the main use cases. It's still like a very, very early version of the skill, so we didn't think about this. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. I'm still around.